Okay, thank you, Ray. And we'll start now, and I'm sure we are already live on YouTube. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our EU Ambassadorial Lecture in cooperation with the Delegation of the European Union to Indonesia. My name is Willie, and I will be the moderator for today's event. Before we begin, on behalf of the organizing committee, I would like to send our prayers and thoughts to those who are affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. May we remind everyone to stay at home as much as you can and keep implementing the health protocol to protect ourselves, our family, and the people we love. Ladies and gentlemen, today, Foreign Policy Community of Indonesia has the pleasure to once again conduct the Ambassador Lecture Series with His Excellency Vincent Piket, Ambassador of the European Union to Indonesia. Good afternoon, Ambassador. I hope you're doing well.
Good afternoon.
We are also joined by the founder and chairman of Foreign Policy Community of Indonesia, Dr. Dino Patijalal. Welcome, Pak Dino. Glad to have you here.
Thank
Uh,
you, Willie.
Yes, we are also joined by hundreds of students from FPCI University chapters across Indonesia and participants who are tuning in live on our YouTube channel. So I welcome everybody to the lecture today. To open our virtual lecture, may I invite Dr. Dino Patijalal for his welcoming remarks. Dr. Dino, the screen is yours.
Thank you, Vincent, my good friend, and Ray, Willie, and all the friends from campuses across Indonesia. I don't have a I just want to welcome you. And when Europe latest climate policy, I immediately want to tune in because, as you know, and FPCI is quite proud of this. Before the think tanks in Indonesia and groups paid attention to climate change this year, we were the first to alert people that COVID-19 and climate is going to be the issue of this year. And if you look at what's happening in Germany, what's happening in China now, one year rain in 3 days is a sign of extreme weather, which is the sign of climate change. And Indonesia is going to be receiving manifestations of climate change. Already we have, of course, but we're going to see more of it. What we need to do is really reflect and respond with a stronger climate policy. FPCI has announced very openly and very clearly what we want is net zero Indonesia by 2050, right? We're glad the government has moved the target from 2070 to 2060. But FPCI is not satisfied that we want it to be 2050 because this is not subject to politics, to anything else. Is really about the permanent future of Indonesia and the next generations. We have introduced a concept called climate nationalism, which means if you are nationalistic, you really need to pay attention to climate issues. And we are about to launch a new campaign called Generation NZ, right? So we know what Generation Y is. They're very strong now in the market and in politics. We know what Generation Z is. And now the next generation is called Generation NZ. We've coined that term, which means Generation Net Zero. They are going to be the ones that will inherit Indonesia and inherit the next world order, and what they want and what we deserve to give them is a world of climate security with the temperature below 2 degree Celsius temperature rise, preferably before 1.5 Celsius temperature rise. So with that, thank you, Vincent. Europe is the most progressive group of countries on climate policies, the most progressive, I guarantee you, right? They're always leading, and I think Europe-Indonesia cooperation on climate change will be and should be the key defining feature of our bilateral cooperation. So let's see what Europe has to offer to Indonesia, and I hope all students will put climate on your key agenda among your friends in campus and around the neighborhood. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dino, for your remarks and your reminder for all the students to participate in taking care of our climate and our Mother Earth. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let's proceed. Ladies and gentlemen, last week on 14th of July, the EU has officially launched a new initiative called the Fit for 55 Climate Package. This initiative is aimed to meet the EU's Green Deal goal of climate neutrality by 2050 and a 55% reduction in emissions by 2030. I'm sure everyone is eager to know what this initiative is all about, and on a more practical level, what does it mean for Indonesia? But before I give the screen to Ambassador Piket, I encourage everyone who is watching to share your moments with us from this lecture by tagging at FPCindo and at uni_Eropa on your social media posts. We also encourage students in the Zoom room to actively participate until the end to win interesting prizes from the EU delegation to Indonesia. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, may I invite Ambassador Vincent Piket to the screen. Please, Ambassador.
Thanks very much indeed, Willy, for the introduction and for hosting this webinar this afternoon, together with your colleagues of FPCI Secretariat. Thanks very much also, Dino Patitjalal, for your inspiring words right at the start of this meeting. And you have, with FPCI, made absolutely no secret of where you stand on the climate policy and on the need for a very ambitious goal setting by Indonesia, and I appreciate that a lot. It echoes completely the importance and the priority that the European Union attaches to climate action and to making sure that we keep this one and only Earth we have livable, not just for ourselves, not just for the next generation, but for the generations after that particularly. So we have a momentous job to do, not an easy one, but that shouldn't stop us. Let me begin before I move to the topic of this afternoon, just to echo what Willy said earlier on concerning COVID, and to express on behalf of the European Union our profound sympathy with all the families, all the communities that have lost loved ones as a result of the pandemic. All the communities and individuals who have lost jobs, have lost income, have lost maybe even a little bit of a sense of their future. And just to say that we all go through this crisis together in Indonesia, in Europe, in different ways, with different peaks and waves, and etc. But let me say very strongly to everybody that the EU sympathizes with Indonesia and its population. We support you. We have raised quite some money to finance COVID response actions in Indonesia, done by civil society organizations for vulnerable people, and also by the government and the education sector, with lending together with the German Development Bank, lending to two large referral hospitals for COVID, one in East Java and the other in South Sulawesi. And we will continue doing that. We'll continue to support COVAX, the multilateral facility for supplying vaccines to low-income and middle-income countries around the globe. And also we will continue to work bilaterally with Indonesia, with lending expected before in the next couple of months for vaccine purchases by Indonesia on its own, lending coming from the European Investment Bank. To show that our moral and sympathy is matched also by practical action. And that in a way leads me into the topic for this afternoon. COVID is connected indirectly with the climate, with climate action. We said in the European Union that yes, of course, we have to fight the pandemic. We have to combat it in all its with all the forces we have. It is a deep, deep crisis for everybody, but it should not blind us to the other crisis that we have taking shape in parallel in the same unstoppable manner, seemingly as COVID, and that is the climate crisis. Dr. Dino has cited the extreme weather crises that we have seen unfold in China, in the western parts of Europe, in Germany, in Belgium, in the Netherlands. We've seen the horrible wildfires in California and in the northern states of the United States. Similar fires not too long ago in Australia, and so the list of extreme weather conditions is endless, and there's only one conclusion possible. It's got to do somehow with the changing of our climates, with global warming, the changing of the biosystems around the world. Extreme weather conditions are one phenomenon, one expression of the climate crisis. Other expressions are, of course, much more gradual, but still very, very present. The sea levels are rising. That's an established fact, scientifically proven. And that poses problems to hosts of regions, of countries, of parts of countries throughout the world, in Europe, in Indonesia, other parts of Asia. We all face this, and it has to be stopped, or else we will all sink, literally, and get submerged under the sea waters and have spent tremendous amounts of money to defend our territories. So that is the backdrop for the EU's action on climate. This double dealing with two crises at the same time, COVID as well as the climate. The reason, this is also the reason why we launched a good year ago our large flagship policy of the European Green Deal. And it is in that connection that a week ago, Wednesday the 14th, the European Commission put forward a very operational package of measures for climate, for energy, for land use, for transport, for energy taxation, which is a vital first step for the EU reaching the goal of cutting greenhouse gas emissions. Now, we have several steps in that process. Step one is the year 2030, very important year for the whole international community, because 2030 is the benchmark year for the Paris climate agreement. And by 2030, the entire international community, all signatories to the Paris Accord, including the EU, including Indonesia, have to put on the table collectively commitments to cut CO2 that put us on a course of keeping global warming below 2 degrees centigrade, and preferably close to 1.5 degrees centigrade. Now, to do that, the EU has made clear its offer, its commitment, and that commitment is to cut CO2 by the year 2030 by 55%. Compared to the year 1990. That is step one. 2030 minus 55% in CO2 emissions cut, and leading to our final goal by the year 2050 of being a carbon neutral and climate neutral economy and society. Once we achieve that, the EU will be the first region, the first continent in the world to do a thing like that. And we're very ambitious, clearly, and we're very determined at the same time. To shape that determination, we have cast our commitments, our goals into a law. It's called the European Climate Law, adopted in late 2020, 6 months ago. And that law legally binds the EU to the goals that I've just stated. And the purpose of casting this into law is to make sure that that there is no shilly-shallying, there is no hesitation, there is a complete determination, a focus and predictability about what we're going to do, both internationally, vis-a-vis the parties in the international climate agreements, and also domestically on the European continent, predictability for our citizens and predictability for our companies, for our investors, and everybody who is affected by climate change. Now, the Fit for 55 package presented last week, a proposal from the European Commission, which, as you know, is the executive branch of the European Union. You see their building in the background photo behind me. Proposal that will include the elements to set into motion the transformational change that we want to achieve for the EU's economy, for industry, and for society, and leading to this emissions cut by 55% in the year 2030. The Fit for 55 package consists of 13 legislative proposals, and there's a general policy paper on top of it to explain how all these proposals hang together and how, as a package, they will deliver on the EU's objective. Some of the proposals are proposals to amend and upgrade legislation that we already have. 8 of the proposals are in that category. And there are 5 new proposals that set up new measures and new policies across a range of sectors: climate, energy, transport, buildings, land use, and forestry. Important thing to stress is that it's a package, that all the measures hang together and cannot be looked at in isolation. It's an integrated package of proposals covering energy and climate that, taken all together, and when you put them into action, in a coordinated fashion, will do what we want to achieve. It's a proposal for now, proposal by the European Commission, and it's now going to for discussion and for decision making by the EU member states, 27 member states, and the European Parliament. So we have a political debate ahead of us, tough debate, no doubt, in certain areas, because even though there is a widespread consensus amongst member states to go down this path towards climate neutrality and zero carbon, there are, of course, interests and different perspectives and different transition paths to follow, and the debate about that will of course, be a tough debate that we have to face, but that I'm sure we will resolve. You can show the first slide I have, and just to summarize the package in one slide. So here's the policy mix, and as you see, there are 4 kinds of measures: pricing measures, targets, rules, and there are support measures. Let's look at them for a moment. Not too much detail, but just to give you a flavor of what it is about. First of all, we are upgrading our emissions trading system. You will know that the emissions trading system has been around in the EU for a good 15 years now. It has worked very well, not without problems, but on the whole, everybody credits the emissions trading system for having prompted, for having put in motion a virtual cycle of investment in clean technologies in industry, in the energy sector in particular, that have made tremendous progress. It's all based on the notion that you have to put a cost on CO2 emissions. This is not something that companies or individuals, for that matter, can produce without any cost. No, there is a harm in emissions, and in the same way as you have to dispose of your garbage at a cost, you have to do that for emissions as well. So the emissions trading scheme has not covered everything, all sectors, and our proposal is now to expand the system to maritime transport, so far exempted, to road transport as well, and to buildings, to construction. So that is one important change that we are putting forward. We will also reduce the number of free emission vouchers that have been available so far, gradually bring them down in number, making that companies will have to purchase more, so that there's more cash going into into the system for environmental greening and cleaning and technological upgrading in industry and elsewhere. So fewer free emission vouchers and raising cash, in other words, for more climate friendly action. The other important new element is that we will modify our rules for taxing energy. And I can put it very simply that the principle is that we will aim to make sure that we tax what is dirty and what is brown, and that we incentivize what is clean and what is green. How? By changing the way in which we tax the energy. At the present moment, it's a tax based on the volume of energy, on volume of gas, or of petrol, what have you. And we want to move away from that volume basis to using a basis of taxing energy on their taking into account the energy content of a fuel and the polluting content of a fuel. In other words, a very targeted tax that will make it more expensive to pollute, and thereby we will prompt companies and people to diminish pollution and focus on the shift towards greener and more efficient fuels. And the last element is the new carbon adjustment mechanism proposal. Now, this is a proposal that even before it was made, provoked a lot of discussion internationally across the globe, because of course countries are worried about a new import duty happening for entry of products into the EU. That is not the case. This is not a duty. This is not a tax. It is a cost along the same principle that I described before, a cost that you have to pay for whenever you pollute. And that goes for companies on the European continent. But in order to have a level playing field between our companies in Europe and companies outside Europe, you have to apply such a cost also to the imports coming into Europe from the outside. Why is it necessary to have such a level playing field? It's necessary to avoid what we call carbon leakage. And one example is that if a company in Europe thinks that producing elsewhere is cheaper because there are no rules for green production, then they might be tempted to go elsewhere and subsequently move their production, the brown production, elsewhere, and subsequently import the products into the EU. And that, of course, is not what we want. And neither do we want the possibility that companies who are based outside the EU will have an unfair competitive advantage over European firms, so companies inside Europe, as a result of the fact that they use outdated, dirty technology for their goods. So the carbon border adjustment mechanism is precisely that. It tries to strike a balance between products which are green and products that are not green whenever they are imported into the European Union. I go to the second box, and that's about targets. And of course, we are very ambitious in our target setting, and we have to, that's necessary. At the same time, we have to make sure that we are also realistic about the differences between our member states. There are some member states that are very much advanced already, on reducing carbon inside their economies and societies, others which still have a longer transition track to go. And of course, in a union of 27, you have to cater for that sort of difference, and you have to make sure that the fastest, the most advanced help those who have to progress more, relatively speaking, in order to achieve our collective goal. Otherwise, you wouldn't have a union, but you would have fragmentation. So we are setting up, as a result, a very specific system for balancing out those differences between member states. It doesn't mean that member states with more transition requirements will be exempted. No, the overall goals are the same for everybody. But it does mean that the member states with the larger transition track to achieve will get extra support and will get a transition time that can be a bit longer than for the most advanced member states. So effort sharing by taking into consideration realistic differences. The land use change and land use, a very important factor, very much linked to the need for avoiding the loss of carbon capture mechanisms. Forests is an important carbon capture tool and other things. On that score, the EU has to do a lot of work still, and in this new these higher targets for land use change, we will try to take that into account. On renewable energy, first of all, the targets will go up. For renewables, we are not where we wish to be. We are somewhere in the 20% of our energy mix for renewable is too low. And the ambition will be to bring this up to 40% by the year 2030, by a very active, a very strong push for promoting renewable energies in our energy mix. That will go hand in hand with a stronger push for energy efficiency. People always say that the best energy is the energy that you don't use, and up to a limit, of course, that is perfectly true. So there again, you will see a very strong drive by the lawmaker, by the law setter, fixing specific targets for each and every member state to realize for reducing the energy intensity of our economies, of our households, of our construction, of transport, and so on. So very important dimension as well. I go to the next column about rules. And there, very prominent is the transport sector. The CO2 performance of cars will have to improve, and our goal for the car, proposed goal for the car, passenger cars, is that from the year 2035 onwards, not a single new car will be placed on the road in Europe that runs on petrol. So exclusively electric or other non-fossil fuels in cars, new cars from 2035. Now, a car has a lifetime of 10 to 15 years in most cases. So it would mean that by the year 2050, our passenger car transport would be carbon neutral. Same would apply for vans. Of course, you can't do that without an infrastructure for alternative fuels for cars, and that is, of course, very prominently charging stations for electric vehicles. Well, we haven't got enough of them yet, by far not enough in Europe. So we will, with EU budget, support the construction of a network that allows people that will reassure people that wherever they go, they will have charging facilities available, and not only in charging in general, but high power, high velocity chargers for electric vehicles. Then two very interesting proposals, I think. One relating to aviation fuel and the other to maritime fuel. Now, both of these sectors, both aviation and maritime, have been somewhat exempted from many of the greening policies globally, as a matter of fact. So we're only at the start of a process of making aviation and making maritime transport greener and less polluting. Now, one or two measures that we will put into place is to promote the introduction of cleaner fuels for both modes of transport. For aviation, it will include the mixing of jet fuel, kerosene, with biofuels potentially, or others, and something similar for maritime transport. So quite a drive to go there. Of course, this is aviation and maritime are global industries, and as European Union, of course, we can't do everything, but we will do what we can within our territory, and we will do what we can for vessels and for planes that enter our territory or leave from it, and thereby still make a positive contribution. We hope very much that similar initiatives will start to be taken also by other countries and other regions. Lastly, support measures. There are, I think, key words here are in the first line, solidarity, and the second is mitigate impacts for the vulnerable. Solidarity, I already referred to that when I described the process whereby the most advanced member states, the most affluent member states, will contribute to the EU budget for the benefit of the member states that have more transition work to do. So solidarity between member states with a redistribution process mechanism at the EU level. Secondly, impacts for the vulnerable. And this brings in the dimension of citizens, because at the end of the day, of course, all of this is important and good, and it's necessary to work government and industry and sectoral level, transport and construction. However, at the end of the day, of course, it will not become fully effective if the citizens don't buy in into the same notions of greening their lives and the way they run their households. Now, two dimensions. First of all, the opinion polls show that a very, very large majority of European citizens in the 80s towards 90%, strongly support climate action and environmental action in general. So we have a massive popular and the support for these policies, and that of course translates into political support, because citizens choose their members in parliament who voice similar things in their parliaments, both national parliaments, member states, but also at the level of the European Parliament. So political support is key. But secondly, dimension, of course, is money. Because at the end of the day, in your house, as a citizen, you have to do something. You have to put a solar panel on your roof. You have to insulate your roof. You have to put double glazing in your windows. You have to buy a heating system that is energy efficient, and that of course all involves an investment. And of course, there is then a risk that the lower income households aren't able to make that investment. And for that particular purpose, helping those lower income households, the EU is proposing rather massive funding from the EU budget for member states to balance out these social and income issues where they exist amongst the lower income households. All right, so that is what was put forward yesterday, and I will touch on a couple of things that have a important international and external dimension. Of course, these are policies for Europe, and much of it will be implemented in Europe, in the EU. But there are external dimensions as well. And the EU is, of course, our economy is large. We are about a fifth, 20% of global GDP. But our CO2 output, our own, is rather low. It's only 8%. We are highly integrated in the world economy. We're probably the most open economy around the world, and we certainly have no interest whatsoever, for the sake of our trade, for the sake of our foreign investment, inward and outward, and for the sake of the competitiveness of our industry. And we have no interest at all in locking ourselves up. And it means that some of our policies do have, and policy proposals do have and will have, an external dimension. For instance, if you look at the Renewable Energy Directive, it will set a higher target of 40% renewable energy in our energy mix by the year 2030, and especially in transport, in heating, and in cooling, in buildings and in industry. And to realize that we have policies for biofuels, and which, as you know, have been very controversial here in Indonesia, also in Malaysia, because at present our law legislation says that biofuels made of palm oil cannot be considered sustainable energy, and hence we cannot use them in our CO2 reduction accountancy. what I can say right now is that the future amendment of the Energy Directive will not change that. No new rules on the standards whereby we measure the sustainability of biofuels. It will all stay the same. And but what we will do is increase the number of potential biofuels and bio crops from which biofuels can be made, and that can be included into the system of promoting renewable energy. And very particularly, we will proposing to include bioenergy made of wood and wood remainders, and that could have an important opportunity for Indonesia, provided that the wood that is used for bioenergy is harvested and put together in a sustainable fashion. So that might be something we can discuss with Indonesia. The second dimension, second measure, most prominent with a carbon, with an external dimension, is the carbon border adjustment mechanism. I've described how it works, how it will work. I've described what the aim is, and that is to stop carbon leakage, to make sure that there's a green level playing field with producers inside the EU and imports coming into the EU from the outside, stop carbon leakage, and with a mechanism simply to put a price, an extra price on the cost of dirty production. Now, this is a mechanism that, of course, has to function in the framework of the international trade system, and especially the World Trade Organization, who have many rules we set up, helped set up, founding member of the WTO, so we know what we did there, and we are determined to make sure that our carbon adjustment mechanism meets the conditions of the WTO fully. It is not a border tax at all. It is not an extra duty that we impose for products. It's a cost that we charge for, if you like, the right to pollute. And it does not involve directly foreign producers. It will involve the EU importers of goods coming inside, goods that are brown, and who will have to buy carbon certificates corresponding to the carbon price that would have been paid if the goods had been produced under the EU's carbon pricing rules. And the other methodology is that if you are a non-EU producer, and if you can show that you have already paid a price for the carbon used in the production of your goods that you want to import to the EU, then this cost can be completely deducted by the EU importer. One thing that is very important to stress is that the carbon border adjustment mechanism is not going to be put up overnight all across the economy, all across our foreign trade. It's going to be very gradual. We have to build it up and make sure that it works, and we will therefore start with only a selected number of products, in particular cement, steel, iron, aluminium, fertilizer, and electricity, which is imported into the EU. Here the implications for Indonesia could be especially for steel. There is a decent sized export of Indonesian steel to the EU, 400 million euros last year. And of course, that is something we need to discuss with the Indonesian side. Next one I would like to mention is forestry. There's first of all the dimension that I mentioned earlier on, the dimension of bioenergy made from wood, coming under the Renewable Energy Directive. That is one, and that could be an interesting aspect for in Indonesia. But the other dimension is that the Fit for 55 package also proposes to revise the rules for forestry to bring stronger incentives for member states to boost the role of the forests as a natural carbon storage. And to do that, the European Commission is proposing that we will have binding targets for member states to increase the amount of carbon that is captured by forest, and thereby obliging the EU countries to take better care of the forests. Not only take better care, but also plant forest. And the target is that by the year 2030, we will have planted 3 billion trees extra compared to what we have now. I find it personally very hard to visualize 3 billion trees, but it sounds to me like an awful lot. And so quite a job ahead in the coming 9 years. And of course, this will need to be reported by member state, the progress, monitored, and both the number of trees planted, but also the contribution by forests in capturing carbon, and the monitoring that will happen, of course, through geographical data and remote sensing, etc. The external dimension is going to come a bit later, and in the sense that later this year, the European Commission will make yet another proposal regarding forest, and that has to do with the import of timber and of timber products into the EU. And our goal is there very simple, and it is a goal to make sure that the timber and timber products, furniture that we import from abroad, do not lead or have not led to deforestation in other parts of the world. So that is a very important objective, very ambitious, and also, of course, will involve dialogue and cooperation with third countries. Now here, I think that Indonesia is in a good position. 2 reasons. First of all, we've had with Indonesia for a number of years now a bilateral agreement, Indonesia-EU, for the import of legally harvested timber and timber products. An agreement called FLEGT, F-L-E-G-T, that allows, under the agreement and with the help of monitoring and reporting mechanisms allows Indonesian exporters of timber to enter the European market without further administrative paperwork and requirements. So we have a track record with Indonesia as regards legally harvested timber. Now, if you take that one step further, of course, the next step is to not only have a system for the import, for the trade of legally harvested timber, but also for sustainable timber and timber that demonstrably has not led to deforestation. And that is, of course, a new dialogue, but there again, I do believe that thanks to the cooperation we've had with Indonesia on the timber market and furniture market, we are well placed to discuss this. And secondly, Indonesia government and private sector have made quite a good progress on diminishing deforestation during the past years. Now, it's not yet over. There is still deforestation going on. So the task is to conclude or to complete the process of stopping the deforestation. But if the past trends are continued in the future, then I think we are on the right track. By the way, all of this has an economic value. The legal timber trade between the EU and Indonesia, that agreement that I mentioned, the FLEGT agreement, is producing every year an export to the EU from Indonesia to the amount of 1 billion euros. Now, that is no mean money, and something that certainly should incentivize all partners in going now the extra mile by including the deforestation, the stopping deforestation objective as well. Very briefly about shipping and aviation. We will include these sectors in our emission trading system. And for the very first time, we will ask shippers that come to the EU when they leave again to fill their tanks with clean fuel. No other fuel will be for sale at some point in the EU for vessels, maritime vessels, but also for airplanes. And as for shipping, the use of sustainable maritime fuels and zero emission technologies will be stimulated by setting a maximum limit on the greenhouse gas content of the energy that is used by ships whenever they call on the European ports. Two topics to conclude on this description is construction and plastics. Now, in Europe, what we will set in motion is a large renovation process. Most people will live in houses that have already been built and may no longer meet the standards and the needs of tomorrow if it comes to reducing their energy usage and the like. So we will, with financial support of the EU, set in motion a very large renovation exercise with a target that every year the public sector renovates 3% of their buildings. So after 30 years, 2050, that job should be done, and this will reduce energy costs, and this will reduce CO2, and it will also create jobs. And why do I mention it? Because I do think that in this connection, a lot of work could be done also here in Indonesia. Saving energy, using the solar more and more. There's tremendous potential here that we can work on. The EU has a lot of know-how for how to go about this, and our firms have that technology around. So I see here a very strong win-win scenario. Last specific topic on which we would like to cooperate is on plastics. This is not directly part of the Fit for 55 package, but we published a plastics policy not too long ago, and it has meant that as of the start of this month, July, new rules have started to apply in the EU that restrict and ban the use of single-use plastic items of all sorts: cutlery, plates, straws, stirrers, everything. And we also set in motion a very ambitious target for collecting and for recycling of plastic waste. And that, again, also I think is something which would be highly desirable in Indonesia. The EU has know-how on how to organize and do that, systems, how you can develop them, how you can bring in the private sector. So here, again, I would see a tremendous opportunity for cooperation. Vis-a-vis Indonesia, how are we going to take this forward? A couple of remarks. First of all, we have our regular policy dialogue with Indonesia in the framework under our bilateral agreement. We have under that agreement the joint working group in environment and climate change, meets every year, and we will be meeting shortly after in the second part of this year, and be discussing all these new initiatives, particularly the external side of it, with our Indonesian counterpart. We tend also to, of course, include this the topic of green trade and sustainable trade in our future free trade agreement, the CEPA, Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, under negotiation, but definitely the green side, sustainable trade, will be part of that, and as an objective. And the second observation I would make is that we have studies to show that the CEPA agreement, once it is up and running, it will bring a lot more European investors to Indonesia. And these investors, of course, will bring not only their cash, but also their know-how, their skills, and their standards. Because bear in mind that European firms, when they leave the EU and come and invest in foreign countries like here, they are held to apply the same standards in the foreign country as they are required to meet inside Europe. We have laws against social dumping. We have laws against environmental dumping. In other words, European FDI in Indonesia brings not only money, but also qualitative change.
Apologies, Ambassador.
Yeah,
Since we have very limited time, maybe you want to wrap up the presentation and we can move on to the question and answer session. Thank you.
almost done. Um, last word is about the COP 26, the climate change agreement happening. The meeting happening in Glasgow this November. A very important meeting for everybody. It is the key touchstone event for measuring whether parties to the Paris Agreement will live up to the promise they made, and the promise in Paris, and that promise was to produce more commitments to cut more CO2 than they had announced so far. So everybody, of course, is a little bit looking at the other person who will move first. Now, the EU has moved, maybe not first, but amongst the first, by putting its 55% on the table, which is raising our commitment by more than 13 percentage points. So, of course, we're looking very, very keenly to what the Indonesian government will be announcing in Glasgow later this year. We hope that it will be a very ambitious commitment, and which is important because Indonesia is not just one member of the Paris Agreement. No, it's a very large member, very important member, large country, large economy, large population. Already now, certainly if you take this forward by another 10, 15 or 25 years, 2045. So we really hope that Indonesia will come on board very strongly and very ambitiously. I stop there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ambassador Piket, for your insightful presentation and detailed updates on the EU new initiative Fit for 55 climate package. Now let us move on to our question and answer session. For our friends in the Zoom room, you can use the raise hand feature now to ask your question directly to Ambassador Piket. You may also type in your questions in the chat box and I will read out the questions later on. Participants on YouTube may also ask your question via the live chat box and the committee will fetch your questions later on to me. Please remember, ladies and gentlemen, to state your name and where you are from before asking your question to the ambassador. So for our first batch of question, I will invite 2 or 3 university students in the Zoom room to ask questions directly to ambassador. May I invite Dafa first from UPN Jawa Timur. Yes, committee, can you unmute Dafa? Thank you.
Okay, hello. Is my voice clear?
Yes, Dafa.
Okay, firstly, my name is Dafa. I am from Universitas Pembangunan Nasional Veteran East Java in Surabaya. My question is that, given the fact that EU countries are most progressive group of countries in the world in terms of climate policy and also the scale of this Fit for 55 in particular and the European Green New Deal in general in terms of political economy, could these massive climate policies and ideas initiative become some kind of so-called new European values which could in future making this region unique but also could make difficult future enlargement policies given the scale of this project? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dafa. For our second question, maybe Sofian. You can unmute yourself, Sofian.
Yeah, hello. Could you hear my voice clearly?
Yes, now, but it's kind of breaking.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Hello, Mr. Vincent. Good afternoon. My name is Sofian Adifullah. You can call me Sofian, and I'm from FPCI Chapter Winsa. So as you know, REDD plus or reducing emission from deforestation and forest degradation is kind of like policy or effort designed to reduce greenhouse gas emission resulting from the process of deforestation and forest degradation through the use of financial instruments. So my question it would be, how could the REDD plus program ensure that the forests in the communities and forest keepers in developing countries will get benefit from REDD plus? And also, is there any agenda from EU regarding reducing emission from deforestation and forest degradation or REDD plus to developed countries such as Indonesia and
Sorry, Sofwan, you are muted. Can you repeat your question again?
Yeah. Oh, okay. So my question, first, how could the REDD plus program ensure that forest independent communities and forest keepers in developing countries will get benefit from REDD plus? And is there any agenda from EU regarding reducing emission from deforestation or degradation to developed countries such as Indonesia and any other countries in the world?
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Sofwan. Maybe Ambassador, you can answer the first two questions.
Thanks very much. The question from Defa in Surabaya, UPM Yatim and Surabaya. I think that what you describe is a risk that you go in a union of 27 countries. There is a risk that some countries fall behind and cannot meet certain standards. But as I hope I have described, we have definitely the intention to make sure that everybody can move along towards the same goal, not in the same way and maybe not at the same speed, but still the end goal and the end time deadline remains the same, 2050. So we will have to do different things to make the transition in my home country, the Netherlands, compared to a country with a different economy, with a different energy structure, like for instance Poland. That's evident, but we have proven within the EU that we can bridge those differences, that we can make sure that all member states can move along, and that we have the support mechanisms, the financial mechanisms to help the countries with the longer transition track to achieve this goal. That is within the EU. How does it affect possible enlargement of the EU? It's not the first question now, but definitely when all candidates for membership will need to aspire to the same goals. And if we are committed to a new member joining, we will certainly help that future member to do exactly what the EU is doing right now with the 27, and in order to make sure that all members stay on board. So in other words, I don't see that as a major problem. It's a challenge, but it is a challenge we can address. Then the question of Sylvia from UNISA about deforestation and involving the forest-dependent communities. Beautiful phrase. I think that we're very well aware of that, of course. In a country like Indonesia, there are many people whose incomes, whose livelihoods depend on the forest. We have the very large sector or segment of smallholder palm oil planters, and who still have to apply the full sustainability notions in how they handle their natural resources. The problem of slash and burn happens, causing forest loss. So there is an investment job to be done for those communities. Investment in two ways. First of all, skills, train people how to run, how to use the forest in a sustainable way. And secondly, probably there has to be some investment in assets, and there, who can do that? Of course, the government can help them do that. Secondly, the large palm oil companies can help them do that. At the end of the day, they buy palm oil from the smallholders. And thirdly, why not development banks like the ADB, like the World Bank, like the European Investment Bank? They can do that sort of work as long as it is economically viable. Certainly, a lot of support can come from them as well, with loans that are very moderate and modest repayment conditions.
Okay, Ambassador, thank you very much for your answer. Ladies and gentlemen, if you would like to ask your question directly to Ambassador, please raise your hand now. But before that, Ambassador, we're going to move to the question from YouTube. The first question is from Fitriana from Indonesian Ministry of Defense. Ambassador, we are not going to get to net zero without dramatic change to how we move about. Could cycling be a part of the solution, Ambassador? And could a dramatic increase in cycling for transport budge the needle on our collective carbon footprint? How big would be the impact of cycling to our carbon footprint in terms of our collective size, Ambassador? And for the second question is from Christian. He asked, a lot of developing countries still see the path to economic growth as linear to something that is similar to the 19th century European Industrial Revolution, Ambassador. As we all know, industrial output affects global climate the most and is among the main causes for climate change issues. Is there other way for us to achieve economic development without expanding our industrial output, Ambassador? And the third question from Evelyn. Does the carbon price vary from country to country, and how do you set a domestic price for carbon, Ambassador? So those are the three questions for this batch. Please, Ambassador.
Thank you. Very different questions. Well, first, the question from Vitriani on Defense Ministry. Well, cycling does help. Cycling at the same time cannot be the main solution. The main solution is in the use of all transport modes that use little or no fossil fuels. Public transport has a small carbon imprint because it's public and it's the CO2 output per head is low. So cycling, walking, at the end of the day, public transport combined with private transport with renewable fuels are the way forward. I come from a country where people cycle an awful lot. That is how we have always done it. Can it be replicated in Indonesia? I'm sure to some extent. Not photocopy it, but if I see the development in Jakarta just over the years, the 2 years that I've been here, then it's quite massive how people are taking to cycling. So it's very, very promising. The second question from Christian about balancing economic development with sustainability and sustainable growth. I think that's a core question that we have to address. We have always been saying that, of course, the developing and emerging countries, they need to have their chance to move ahead, to become wealthier, to reduce poverty, and to become high income. That is what they have to do, and we totally accept that. We are also saying, however, that you can do that growth drive while respecting the natural resources, while reducing the impact we have on our biodiversity by what we call decoupling growth from resource use. And this can be done because unlike in the 18th century, the Industrial Revolution, steam and stuff, we have now other technologies which are freely available, which any company with a sensible economic plan can use, as opposed to dirty technology. Maybe the price upfront is a bit higher, but you will get your return from this by lower energy costs and by avoiding carbon pricing, which will also come to Indonesia. The government is talking about that already now. So, in other words, combine growth with sustainability. The EU, let me one last figure to illustrate. Between 1990 and 2020, 30 years, we grew our economy by 40%, 40% GDP growth total. At the same time, we reduced our CO2 emissions in the same time by 30%. So 40% more bigger economy with 30% less CO2 emissions. This is just our example, and we have the technologies which we can bring to Indonesia. We have the know-how to help your country do that. The last question from, I didn't get the name, about carbon pricing. How do you do that? Frankly, I would have to owe you the answer on this one. But the principle is very, very simple, that we'll compare the cost of carbon paid by the European producer of a product with the cost, with the carbon cost paid by a foreign producer of the same product. And if that cost is equal, then there is no issue. If it turned out that the foreign producer pays considerably less for the carbon than does the European producer, then we have to adjust this difference to maintain a level playing field and to avoid free riding. People or companies that enjoy the goods of the benefits of the internal market of the EU without making playing by the rules of the internal market. And that, of course, is something we want to avoid.
See, thank you, Ambassador. For the next batch, we're gonna take 2 questions from YouTube and 1 question from the Zoom room from Jenny. The first 2 questions, Ambassador, from Tim Patterson, who is the CEO of Fuel Economy Solution. How does the EU intend to ensure that biofuel policies are not self-defeating by leading to increased deforestation? And the second question, Ambassador, from Monica Fabiola. Monica from Universitas Indonesia. Does the EU have targets for biofuel exports and renewable energy, or will there be only domestic focus regarding biofuel and renewable energy, Ambassador? And for our third question is from Jenny. Jenny, you can unmute yourself.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you, Your Excellency Ambassador, for the comprehensive presentation. I'm Jenny from FPCI chapter Pelita Harapan University. So I have 2 questions. Just out of curiosity, it would be great if I could request for Mr. Ambassador to explain further about what has been mentioned in the presentation before about the concrete examples of the details on the matters of sustainable trade in the future free trade agreement. So I was curious on what are the forms of its realization. So if within the EU, it might be, for example, like electricity and power linkages, if I'm not mistaken, was mentioned before. And how will it be towards the countries outside the EU, such as Indonesia? Like, what are the possible concrete forms for regarding the future trade agreements that are sustainable? And also the second thing, the same question, but regarding the foreign investors from EU that was mentioned also, about the kinds of skills and knowledge that will be planted in or shared to Indonesia. As mentioned before by Mr. Ambassador, that there will be foreign investors, foreign people from EU that will be coming to Indonesia for the investment. How is it exactly according to the EU strategy in Indonesia? That's all about my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. May I invite Ambassador to answer the 4 questions?
All right. So the question from Tim from private sector firm, how to avoid that biofuel lead to deforestation. Now that is the key question that we have tried to answer with the Renewable Energy Directive in the EU as it stands. Because of course you can't. It makes no sense to try and solve a problem by creating a problem elsewhere. We need forests to capture carbon, and if biofuel production were to lead to deforestation, of course you do nothing. So that is avoiding deforestation while promoting biofuels is a key balance to strike and a key objective of ours, and we will. That is the case now, and that will also be the case when after having revised the energy directive later this year, I assume, as we do. So here we have this dispute with Indonesia, also with Malaysia, about the biofuel made of palm oil. We differ of opinion about the science behind it. Indonesia and Malaysia have taken us to the WTO court, and we simply have to wait and see how that dispute court will rule on the suit filed by Indonesia and Malaysia, and so that is where we stand right now. The Renewable Energy Directive is not crop specific. It is open to all crops, so we could certainly expect that this sector will continue, and that at the end of the day the market will find its way. It will shift to those crops where they don't run risks, where they have predictability, where there's no issue, political or civil society issue regarding the merits of the biofuel crop that has been used. But it's a key question for us to discuss with Indonesia, evidently now, but also a bit further down the road. The question from Monica, our biofuel target. We don't have one. We don't have a specific target. We want so much of our renewable energy made with crop-based biofuels. We have a renewable energy target that will go up to 40% by the end of this decade, 2030. So that is a very strong target, but how we realize that is a different thing. So we expect certainly that crop-based biofuels will continue to play a role for some time to come, but over time we expect that role to diminish, thanks to the fact that we will be developing the solar power the wind sector much more prominently, that we are working hard on improving the battery capacity to store electricity made with renewable fuels, and that we avoid the peak problem that we have with wind power, for instance. Hydrogen is a future source of energy that we are doing a lot of research on right now, and it's, we've been talking about hydrogen for quite a while, of course, already, and the promise was never yet delivered, but we think we may deliver it now, and also because the economic fundamentals have changed, and that the cost of the cost the economy will bear for renewable energy is now higher than it used to be, and as we are seeing a rapid phase out of fossil fuel. Questions, plural, from Jenny about FTA and FDI and the free trade agreement. It's a framework, and that will help bring in more European know-how into Indonesia's economy. Right now, we have a good 1,100 European firms in Indonesia, employing 1.1 million Indonesians. These are not foreigners, no, these are Indonesians. And and working in companies where the European standards have to be respected, whether it concerns the environment or whether it concerns labor law, etc. And that is a legal requirement. And even if it were not a legal requirement, then the shareholders will want this, because nobody in Europe will want to have shares in firms that don't apply basic rules of decency and environmental soundness. So we expect that once the agreement, the FTA, is in place, there will be many more European firms coming here. Indonesia is an attractive country. The large domestic market, plenty of human resources, and of course strategic place inside Southeast Asia, or Asia as a whole. So that dynamism will take shape once we have the FTA, and also with FDI. And one example is renewable energy in Indonesia. Right now, problematic. Targets aren't being met. Government not happy about it, need to do better. The energy transition needs to take shape, also here in Indonesia. Less coal, gradual phase out of coal. Target year not yet fixed, but that's what I read in the press. But phasing out coal is one thing, but phasing in renewable is another thing. And here we are working very, very hard with the Ministry of Energy and with the Ministry of with other ministries, and also with the Parliament, about the renewable energy law, the future law of Indonesia. And right now, renewable energy investors have a difficult time because of the market structure and because of the competitive advantage of the fossil fuel power producers, the coal-powered electricity stations in particular. If your future renewable energy law creates the space, the regulatory space and the price space for renewable fuel, I bet you that you will have plenty of investors from abroad, especially from the EU, coming to Indonesia to make it happen on the ground, and that the transition will happen, And the benefit will be for the climate, for the environment, but equally for the citizens of Indonesia.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Vincent, for your answer. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure everyone still have many questions to ask, but unfortunately we cannot take them all today because of the time constraints. We thank Ambassador Vincent Piket and all of the participants who have asked your questions today. That was a very insightful discussion, and I believe that all of us here has learned a lot. After this, ladies and gentlemen, we will have a quiz with interesting prizes by the EU delegation to Indonesia for all of the participants here in the Zoom room. But before that, we will have a virtual group photo session with Ambassador Piket. May I invite all participants to turn on your camera and show Ambassador Piket your best smile. So once again, I invite all participants to turn on your camera. All right. Yes, I will help the committee with the countdown. 3, 2, 1. Once again.
I think we can wait, Willie, for the others to turn on their camera. Yes.
Yes,
my camera is on already.
Yes, Badino.
That was very well and comprehensive lecture, Vincent. Thank you very much.
A pleasure. Hope it's useful.
Very useful. Yeah.
All
okay,
right.
Willie, we can start.
Yeah, I will help with the countdown. 3, 2, 1. Okay. Once again, 3, 2, and 1. All right. Thank you very much, Ambassador Vincent, once again, and thank you very much for all of the participants who have asked your question today. Ambassador, I was informed that you have to leave early. So may I ask if you would like to stay for the quiz, or would you like to say a few words, a closing statement for our participants today?
Well, I've been speaking for so long already, so I'm slow to take the floor again, but just thanking everybody, all FPCI members, the community, and the Secretariat, really for your chairing, and Pardino for his inspiring leadership in FPCI. If I have one message is make it happen. Set this youth movement, young people movement for the climate, for sustainability. Set it in motion throughout Indonesia. Start with your university, with your hometown, with your household, with your family, and reach out on that basis to everybody else, and could make this movement for the climate. It's a movement for Indonesia, and at the same time a movement for the world.
Thank you very much, Ambassador.
Okay. And also, Vincent, if I can, just before you go on your trip, please kindly help spread the concept of generation NZ, generation net zero. The N can go for -0 or net zero. So the N can be a double function. But we want this to be not just a popular Indonesian term, but we want this to be a popular global term, because it applies to everybody, to every youth. Yeah. So if you go to Europe, please talk about generation NZ. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Dino. Yeah. And thank you very much, Ambassador Vincent Piket, for your amazing presentation today and for answering all of the questions asked by the students and the general public. We wish you to stay safe, Ambassador, and safe travels.
Thank you very much. Stay safe, everybody.
Thank you, Ambassador.
Take care.
Bye-bye, Vincent. Let's everybody say goodbye to Ambassador Vincent, and let's give him a big hand. Yeah.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Sure. Pak Dino, if you would
take care, everybody.
Quiz, you are welcome.
But yeah, I'll stay.
Yeah. So much.
Thank you, Pak Dino. Ladies and gentlemen, now we are moving to our quiz. Ladies and gentlemen, the EU delegation to Indonesia have prepared 3 prizes for 3 winners who can answer our questions correctly. The rules are very simple for this game, ladies and gentlemen. There are 3 multiple choice questions followed with answer option A, B, and C that I will read out. Please use the raise hand feature if you wish to answer the question. The person who raised their hand the quickest will be picked to say their answer. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, I will be reading out multiple question answer, and if you know the answer and wish to speak, please raise your hand as quickly as possible. All right, for the first question, ladies and gentlemen, why is the package called Fit for 55? Once again, why is the package called Fit for 55? Option A, because EU aims for a 55% emission reduction by 2030. Option B, because 55 is a lucky number. Or option C, because there are 55 proposals. Yeah.
We have 2 students. The first one, yeah.
Dinda.
Okay, thank you. Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. So the answer is A. The target is to 55% reductions in 2030.
Yes, you are correct. Congratulations, Dinda, for winning prize from the EU delegation to Indonesia.
Thank you.
All right, for the second question, by when is EU aiming to be climate neutral? A, 2030, B, 2040, or C, 2050? Yes. We have Jenny from Universitas Pelita Harapan.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity. I will answer C, to 2050.
Yes, your answer is correct, Jenny. Congratulations for winning the prize from European Union delegation to Indonesia. And our last question, ladies and gentlemen, please raise your hand as quickly as possible. When will the COP26 in November 2021 be held? A, Brussels, B, Glasgow, or C, Amsterdam?
We have Dafa, I believe.
All right, Dafa, please unmute yourself and tell us the answer, Dafa. Dafa, please. Or
I think your connection is unstable. Oh, well, he answered in the chat box. Willie.
It's Glasgow. All right. Congratulations. Your answer is correct. Once again, congratulations to all of the 3 students who have answered our questions correctly. We will be in touch with you to send you the package from the EU delegation to Indonesia. Once again, congratulations, ladies and gentlemen. And with that, we have come to the end of our ambassador lecture today. And on behalf of FPCI, I would like to extend our gratitude again to Ambassador Vincent Piket, the delegation of the European Union to Indonesia, and also to all of the students who have joined today. Thank you, everyone, for your delightful and thought-provoking questions. We hope to see you again in our future events. Good afternoon and stay safe. Thank you, Pak Dino, for joining today's discussion as well.
Thank you,
Pak, everybody, for joining us. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Stay safe.